What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Loft Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Finnegan, joined by Tom Schultz. Tom, what's going on?
Doing well, man. How about yourself?
Doing well. It's Friday. Gotta love
Yes, sir.
Fridays.
Thank God we made it through another week.
Finally made it, brother. All right, folks. Tonight we're bringing you episode 3 of our NFL Draft Series. We'll be focusing on the top wide receivers in the upcoming draft. So we'll go through the top ones, and as we did with the quarterbacks and the running backs, right? We'll go through strengths, weaknesses, maybe some player comps, and which teams some of these players might fit on. So before we get into it, Tom, just a quick question for you as you've been going through these wide receivers. So before we take a deep dive here, right? So the overall sentiment for this entire draft class seems to be, right, that there's not a lot of quote unquote blue chip talent. But my understanding is the wide receiver class here is possibly one of the better position groups in this draft. Would you say that's an accurate statement?
Yeah, I was thinking of this question when you sent the doc over today. I was thinking of this question while I was eating lunch, actually, and I was trying to figure out like what exactly this class is. I mean, if you look at ESPN or someone like Dane Brugler, who I trust a lot, and you look at the amount of wide receivers they have in their top 100 or top whatever, Dane Brugler, I think, has 17 wide receivers in his top 100, some ridiculous number like that. I mean, I've watched 7 guys that we're going to talk about today pretty in-depthly that I all think could potentially go in the first round. If not, definitely will go in the first 2 days. I then think if we look at the best of the rest of some guys I'll name, maybe you'll name, it's another 5 or 6 guys. So we're up to, 12, 13 players just ourselves talking about it. So yeah, I think the depth in this draft is legit. I think it is going to hurt some of these guys and where they might go. We'll talk about Carnell Tate, Jordyn, Tyson, Makai Lemon. They're the consensus, probably top 3 in this draft, depending on who you talk to. And I'm starting to see mocks where Lemon makes it to the Jets at 16. I'm starting to see mocks where I saw a mock today, or not today, sometime this week, that had Carnell Tate falling to around where the Cowboys pick. So I think the depth of these wide receivers might hurt the top end guys because, to your point, I don't know if there's a blue chip guy. I really like Carnell Tate. We'll talk about him in a minute, but I don't know what his ceiling is. I think that's kind of the consensus of this draft as a whole, as we've gone through it, right? We've talked about Mendoza. You asked me my thoughts on Mendoza as a whole for him as a quarterback. Maybe he becomes a top 10 quarterback. If not, I think he floats around that 10 to 20 quarterback range, and he's serviceable. Jeremiah Love has potential to become a top 5 running back, top 10 running back in the draft. I think when we look at these wide receivers, I think 1 or 2 of them have a chance to potentially break into this to the upper echelons of wide receivers in the NFL draft. But what we've seen is outside of Jamar Chase, maybe there are a couple others that come off the top of your head. You look at Puka Nacua, he's a day 3 pick. You look at JSN, he was a later first-round pick. Justin Jefferson, a guy I really liked in that draft. We weren't doing the show at the time, but he was still a middle of the first-round pick. CeeDee Lamb made it in the middle of the first round. So I think what we're seeing is, you can get good wide receivers anywhere, and I think that hurts some of these guys and where they get drafted in terms of this draft and where these guys are. I don't know. I really like Carnell Tate, but if you tell me he's never a top 10 wide receiver in football, that wouldn't shock me either. So yeah, really, really deep class. You're going to be able to get quality wide receivers, probably even on day 3, guys who can come in and impact your football team. But in terms of, is there a guy that you're going to look at and go, that guy's definitely going to be this in the NFL? No, I don't think so. I think there are guys that have potential to be really good, but nothing that you're sure of.
Yeah, hopefully none of these guys in this class, though, are biting shoulders like Puka Nacua, huh? You got Puka biting.
So. I think at least the guys we were talking about today, most of them off the field are pretty good.
You got Puka biting shoulders, Dan Campbell biting kneecaps, people just biting different ligaments of the human body. Let's get into it then. We'll go through. We're gonna start with actually those top 3. So the first one we're gonna look at is Carnell Tate, right? So basically been the consensus number 1 from what I've seen floating around, right? So this is a wide receiver from Ohio State. He's 6'3", about 195 pounds, coming off his junior season, right? So 3 years at Ohio State, For his career, he caught 121 passes, 1,800 yards with 14 touchdowns. This also includes him winning the national championship in 2024 as part of the Ohio State Buckeyes team that year. His last season, so this past season, he caught 51 passes, 875 yards, and 9 touchdowns. At the scouting combine, he ran a 4.53 40-yard dash, which some folks kind of frown upon, but for a receiver who's 6'3", almost 200 pounds, I don't think that's so bad. And he's looked at as potentially a top 10 pick in this draft. So let's look at Carnell Tate then. Strengths, weaknesses, and is there a current receiver you can compare him to?
Yeah, he comes from the school of Ohio State wide receivers, right? We all look to see something from these guys, and the first thing that always stands out with these guys are they are phenomenal route runners. You're gonna hear me talk about this about a lot of these guys that we're gonna talk about tonight are really good, polished route runners. He's as good, maybe the best route runner in this draft. Polished, knows how to set receiver corners up. He's really quick in and out of breaks. Uses his balance and agility while running routes. He has unbelievable balance and body controls. He's a really good, has a really good feel as a route runner. Whether in man, how to use what the corners are giving him against them. In zone, he does a really good job at finding space. I think he's better at finding space in zone than he is against man coverage. Just does a great job with finding the little spaces and pockets in zone coverage. And as a route runner, it just seems really easy for him. So while he might not look like an elite athlete, and quite frankly, he isn't, he's still really polished in everything he needs to do. He is really impressive when the ball's in the air. A really good contested catch guy. He had that catch against Wisconsin, which I think was his best of the year, where he kind of just goes up between two Wisconsin guys, goes up, gets the ball, and then wins it on the way down, which I think is such an underrated thing. I think it was the Wisconsin safety, has his hands or arms on the ball trying to rip it out. You just can't rip it from him. Just a really, really impressive play. If you want to see what Carnell Tate is at his best, go and watch that play. An elite ability to high point the ball, go up and catch it. Always feels like he wins it, whether it's contested catches, whether it's a ball in the air. It's where I think he's at his best as a receiver. He's comfortable helping to find space for the quarterback. When the quarterback gets outside of the pocket, so it'll help extend plays, whether zone or man coverage. Has a really good feel for that as well. Rerouting himself, making himself available for quarterbacks to help once they get out of the pocket. He has great hands. He hasn't dropped anything. He had 0 drops last year. Again, even those contested catches, stuff in the air, he's going to catch it. He's a willing blocker. I like to see him be a little bit more consistent on that. He isn't overly a big threat after the catch. So he's going to make catches, and that might be it. He'll maybe be able to beat 1 or 2 guys. He will still get open, whether that's downfield or whether it's intermediate to medium stuff. He'll get open. It's just not going to be he's going to catch it and run by guys. Again, he's going to make his plays via his route running versus his athleticism. Didn't perform best at the combine. That's been talked about. He also was never the top guy at Ohio State, which is why I think people are having a hard time feeling out where Carnell Tate is going to be. He had either Marvin Harrison Jr. or Jeremiah Smith. They were the number 1 guys at Ohio State. That the question will be, what is his ceiling in terms of that? Can he carry the workload of a number 1 guy? I don't think I'm worried about that. I think he can be a number 1 wide receiver guy in the NFL. I think he can be a 1,000-yard guy, a double-digit touchdown guy in the NFL. He does have to prove that, though. And I wouldn't be shocked if there are some college teams that are, some pro teams that are scared that he was never the guy, but his stats show me that he can carry a workload. My comparisons are, I think he reminds me a lot of T. Higgins, which I don't know if that's going to scare people off or make people feel more comfortable, right? T. Higgins has always done it with Jamar Chase or Chris Olave. I think he's better than Chris Olave. I think he has better hands than Chris Olave. I think he can get open a little bit better than Chris Olave does. Those are my 2 comparisons. If you're a team in the top 10 and you need a wide receiver, I wouldn't be scared by Carnell Tate. I think he's a top wide receiver in this draft. He's my top wide receiver. I think I have him in my top. He's definitely in my top 10. I don't know if he's in my top 5 or not. He's probably really close to if he's in my top 5 or not. So I clearly think highly of him. And I think there is a long-term projected number 1 wide receiver. But I also wouldn't be shocked if teams are looking at him and they're like, well, if he is T. Higgins where I have him and another guy, we'll be happy with that as well.
Yeah, right. T. Higgins and Chris Olave, man, I'm two really good players.
Yeah.
you can make the case, right? If they were on a team without maybe a number one receiver, they could operate in that number one role. So, yeah, based on what you just described, Carnell Tate, I mean, I personally also feel like he could be a number one receiver for a team in the league. Some team fits for me. Cleveland Browns at pick number 6. I think he'd slide right in as that number one receiver. I mean, he'd probably split it at first with Jerry Jeudy, but I think he could develop into the number one in Cleveland. I have Washington here too at pick number 7, maybe a good fit there. Terry McLaurin still doesn't really have a running mate, and we don't know what's going on with the Brandon Ayuk situation either, what's going to happen with him with the 49ers. So Washington may choose to draft Tate at 7. Then here's New Orleans right here at pick number 8. If they wanted to pair him with a guy like Chris Olave, a couple of Ohio State guys there, working on the outsides. I have Miami here, pick number 11. Who are their wide receivers right now? I really don't even know. Their depth chart is basically barren. They need some receivers. And then I have the Rams here at 13, right? Devontae Adams, he's getting up there in age. I think he only has 1 year left on his contract. So maybe Carnell Tate could be a guy that you look to, bring him in this year. Maybe he wouldn't get, a lot of reps this year, playing behind Puka and Devontae, but going forward after the 2026 season, he'd step right in to that Devontae Adams role with the first team there. So but I agree. I think he's a top 10 player in this draft. And I mean, I think the Rams getting him at 13 would be a freaking steal. And I really can't see him slipping past the Rams at 13.
I can't see him slipping past Cleveland, if I'm being honest with you. The Ohio State-Cleveland connection, they drafted Junkins last year. I think they have a couple other Ohio State guys on their roster. I mean, I know there's been talk of the Giants taking him at 5. I could see that. I don't think it's likely anymore. I can't see this guy getting past Cleveland. I would actually be really shocked. If he gets past Cleveland, he won't get past Miami. New Orleans would be an interesting spot, depending on who else is on the board, but he won't get past Miami at 11. And to your point, this is a top wide receiver in the draft to me. I know I've talked about him, and they're probably putting some doubt there. There's no doubt that this guy can be a top number one wide receiver in football. I think the question is just where he fits after that. Is he ever a top 10 guy in the NFL? Can he get any higher than that? I don't know, but he's going to come in and be a serviceable guy because everything he shows on film translates to what you want out of a wide receiver in the NFL.
All right, let's move on to our number 2 receiver here on our list. Jordyn Tyson, who a lot of folks thought coming into this upcoming college football season was going to be far and away the number 1 wide receiver. And we'll get into why maybe he is not the number 1 wide receiver in a lot of folks' eyes. Jordyn Tyson, 6'2", about 200 pounds, from Arizona State. He was a redshirt junior this past year. So originally recruited by Colorado as a freshman in 2022. He caught 22 passes, 470 yards, and 4 touchdowns there. And then he transferred. He actually missed his 2023 season with injury, which I'll get into in a little bit. But he transferred for the 2024 season to Arizona State. And he played 2 seasons there. In 2024, his most productive season, he caught 75 passes for 1,100 yards with 10 touchdowns. Last season, 2025, he caught 61 passes for 700 yards with 8 touchdowns. So ton of talent here, but now it's injuries that he's suffered during his college career. So in 2022 at Colorado, he suffered a very bad knee injury. He basically tore up his whole knee, his ACL, his MCL, and his PCL. And basically the injury was so bad, he actually ended up missing the entire 2023 season following his knee surgery, and he needed to rehab. He actually saw very limited action, about 3 games as a reserve. But in 2024, after he transferred to Arizona State, that was his breakout season. He played really well, but he suffered a broken collarbone in late November, and he required surgery on his collarbone, and that forced him to miss the Big 12 championship game, and he missed the college football playoff. And then last year with Arizona State, his final season, he had a lingering hamstring injury that cost him 3 games during the middle of the season. He did return for the season finale against Arizona, but reportedly he suffered another injury to his left hamstring. And that also impacted his pre-draft process. So, Tom, we'll get into Jordyn Tyson now, right? So strengths, weaknesses, and if there's a receiver you can compare him to, and then how big of a concern to you are the numerous injuries this guy has suffered?
Yeah, I mean, the first word you're going to get when you talk about Jordyn Tyson is just quickness. He's the quickest wide receiver in this draft. He's probably one of the quickest players in the draft. His first step is just absolutely ridiculous. His change of pace, his ability to cut is at a level that you just can't teach. He gets in and out of routes so quickly and so quick. There are times that he'll beat corners who are playing press man on him so fast that the safeties have no chance to get over. So there's times you watch Levitt this year and last year that Tyson just wins off the snap, and then the ball's just out of Levitt's hands because there's no way a safety can get across. And once you get the ball in Tyson's hands, he's gone. He will literally send corners the wrong way off the snap. Like, he has that type of quickness. It makes him a really, really dynamic route runner. He's just tough to cover in man coverage. He sets corners up really well. He can rely on his quickness a little too much as a route runner. Like, people love him as a prospect because of this. There are things as a route runner that I don't love because of it. I think he relies on his quickness way too much. And it takes him a little longer than I would like to set corners up because there's a hesitation. There's the stutter steps he'll do to try to set the corner up. And there are times that just your quarterback just isn't going to have the time for that. So I'd like to see him just get into the route and trust that quickness. We'll see if that becomes an issue in the NFL. He may be a guy that's like, I can get away with this at Arizona State. In the NFL, I'll just trust my quickness. But it shows up a little bit too much for me. He has great hands. Doesn't drop it if it's in his direction. He did have drop issues at the beginning of his college career at Colorado and a little bit at Arizona State. He has improved. I think he had a drop last year, and he's gotten better at contested catches as well. So it's something that he needed to work on, and he's gotten better at. Can play inside and outside. He was effective at both positions. Again, like Carnell Tate, he's a willing blocker. I'd like to see him become a bit more consistent in that. I would expect him to be a little bit more threatening after the catch, but that quickness isn't necessarily straight line speed. It's more of just that first or second step. So he can make a guy or two miss, but he doesn't necessarily always run by guys. My biggest knock on him is I don't think he likes physicality. He's just not physical. There are times, instead of just using the quickness or embracing the physicality, he'll try to like duck under corners and just like sidestep and avoid the physical contact. I just don't like that in his game. The biggest question though is going to come his health. You mentioned it. Tore his ACL his sophomore year. He broke his collarbone his redshirt sophomore year, missed games because of that in the playoff. Had the hamstring injury, which not only forced him to miss games, he did not work out at the combine. And recently, Dane Brugler has reported that he's not running at his pro day because the hamstring stuff is still lingering. That's a major red flag for me. It's a red flag for two reasons. One, it's been 4 months since October, basically. And whether it's the left hamstring or the right hamstring, it's still having an impact on him. Two, for a guy who lives off his quickness, I'm very, very concerned that the hamstring is still an issue. And even if it heals, are we approaching a territory now where that quickness just isn't the same? There's no reason to believe that that will or won't happen. We don't know yet. And any NFL team that drafts this guy and looks to take him will have the medicals. All right. But his name is continuing to drop in draft circles. And it would tell me that there's medical stuff that these people don't really trust. I mean, anytime you have a guy that is so reliant on just natural ability in terms of quickness or speed, and you have a muscle injury that's still lingering 4 months later, I have major concerns on that. There's enough for me as it was that I didn't have him over Tate just based off of the film. I think I have Makai Lemon in front of him now. I think he would still be third for me, even with the injuries and the concerns, but I could see teams bumping him even deeper on their boards if because of it. This guy gets to the 20s, he's going to be taken, and there'll be teams that'll be patient. Like if this guy ended up where the Rams pick in the 20s or even the Niners, I could see either of those teams just being like, yeah, this guy's way too good a value to not take. Worst case scenario, he's not healthy. And it is what it is. We took a risk. Best case scenario is that guy in those offenses looks unbelievable. My comparison would probably be Chris Olave, but quicker, or Garrett Wilson. He reminds me of Garrett Wilson a little bit, but he's probably even a little bit quicker than Garrett Wilson. This is a guy that if he can be healthy and if he didn't get hurt, is probably in talk to be a top 10 pick along with Carnell Tate. And the injuries have just hurt him. So I'm curious to see. I don't think their pro days happen yet. I'm curious to see when their pro day comes, if he does work out. I'll look that up when you're talking about teams. But yeah, he's a guy who he has to find a way to get healthy.
It's pretty interesting. You mentioned, kind of avoids physicality. I wonder if maybe that's just a mental thing with the injuries at this point. Maybe he's afraid that he's going to get hurt, which I guess to an extent, I guess I can't really blame him, but at the same time, you kind of have to block some of that out and just go out there and play, right? If you got to run block, you got to run block. So, he's going to have to try to come over. If that's a mental limitation for him, he's going to try to, get over that hurdle, so to speak. As far as team fit, so I had the Saints at 8, like I mentioned earlier. A couple of teams the same, right? Saints at 8, Dolphins at 11, Rams at 13, right? Who I mentioned for Carnell Tate. I have the Ravens here at pick number 14. Think he could be a good complement there to Zay Flowers. I have the Jets here at 16, right? The Jets need somebody to run with Garrett Wilson, who you just mentioned. You kind of a comparison to Garrett Wilson. So I have him there. And then if we get later into the draft, I have the 49ers here at pick number 27 as too good to pass up at 27 at that point. Even as we get a little later, if he were to even maybe a team like the Patriots, right, that needs a wide receiver too, that needs to jump up maybe ahead of the 49ers. I don't know if the Bills would be willing to trade with them at 26, but I don't see him falling out of the first round. The team will grab him even if it's late. He'll stay in the first round.
I'll just say this. If he does, or we get into the 20s and he's not picked yet, that to me is a major red flag that teams got medicals on this guy and they don't trust what they're hearing. So just keep that in mind as well.
All right, let's get to our next wide receiver. You mentioned him a little earlier, Makai Lemon. So Makai Lemon, 5'11", 195 pounds from USC. So he spent 3 seasons at USC, didn't really play his freshman season, but his sophomore year, he had a good year, which was in 2024, caught 52 passes for 760 yards. 3 touchdowns. Now, his last season, so his junior year, 79 catches, 1,100 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Fun fact, actually, he's actually completed 2 of 2 pass attempts with 1 touchdown, 100% completion percentage. So you hear that, Jets fans? We might have a quarterback here who's playing wide receiver in the draft. Also has experience returning kickoffs. So I've seen draft projections for him that looks like he's looking like he could be a mid-first round pick. Possibly could be maybe the number 2 wide receiver, right? I think that's what you mentioned you had him as. So Makai Lemon, strengths, weaknesses, and is there a current receiver you might compare him to?
And again, I think when it comes down to wide receivers, and I think this goes for every team in the NFL, but wide receiver especially, I don't think there's any one group or set of teams that have the same draft boards, right? Each wide receiver provides different things. That's the beauty of this draft is you can get a number of different wide receivers. Makai Lemon, I could see being first on certain teams' draft boards because he provides something different. Again, really smooth route runner, wins off the snap with his first step, does a great job finding space, has a great feel against zone or man. But what really stands out for me is him finding the space in zone coverage. He manipulates his body really well, works little pockets, made it really easy for his quarterback last year. Has a great feel for using what corners give him, whether it's inside, outside leverage, can use tight coverage against corners when it comes to running out routes or comebackers. He's just a really good route runner. Really good set of hands, isn't afraid to play physical despite his size. Really impressive when it comes to making contested catches or back shoulder catches. Has great body control for a wide receiver his size. He can be a threat after the catch. May not be a home run threat, but he's still a guy who, when he runs, he can break tackles or he can take a 10-yard pass and make it a 20, 25-yard play. He does a great job reading the field and finding space once he gets the ball. Can return punts and kickoffs. Is more of a safe set of hands. I wouldn't say he's super threatening on kickoffs like someone like KC Concepcion is, but still, if you want a guy to just catch the ball, fair catch it, make sure you don't turn the ball over on kickoffs, he can do that. Struggles to get separation against longer, more physical corners. He isn't an elite athlete, didn't run a 40 at the combine, but ran at his pro day. He's recorded between a 4.45, 4.53, but still good enough speed. To me, he's a chain mover. He's a guy who's going to help your offense on the field. He's been compared to Amon-Ra St. Brown. That is the comparison. They're both from USC. They're both of similar build, and that's a guy that went way later than he felt he deserved. And I think he showed NFL evaluators what he brings to the NFL game is so valuable. That's what Makai Lemon is, and it's why why if you have a guy that is really good on the outside, you're going to look to take Makai Lemon and pair him up versus maybe Carnell Tate. He's going to provide different things, and he had a really, really good season for USC this year. He's a dynamic wide receiver. He's really fun to watch, and I think he's going to have a really good NFL career.
Yeah, I think the most notable thing I saw from Makai Lemon at the Combine, right, was his podium interview where it kind of became like a meme, the way he was like answering questions. People thought it was like, they didn't think he was being serious or something. But, oh, anyway, team fits for me for Makai Lemon. So, right, so kind of the obvious ones like we mentioned. Washington, New Orleans, Miami at 11, the Rams at 13. I don't think he's going to get past those teams, but I also have the Jets here at 16, really need a wide receiver. Again, can't see him making it this far down the list here, but if he does, I have Carolina here at number 19. They really don't have much for Bryce Young to work with there besides McMillan. You'd have back-to-back first-round rookie wide receivers, but you don't have to pay anybody right away, so a couple more years for that. So that could make sense. And then I have the Steelers here at pick number 21. They need to keep adding to that wide receiver room as well for, I'm assuming, Aaron Rodgers coming back this year to play quarterback. I don't see any way he would make it past the Steelers, but honestly, I don't think he'd make it past Miami at 11.
Yeah, it is also to note, too, that reports from the Combine came that outside of his Combine interview with the press, apparently his interviews with teams were really bad.
I had heard that, yeah.
And the vibe coming off of him is that, does he care? Does he really like football? Again, that's what's being reported. Everything you read in the media now is being pushed with an agenda. Are there teams in the teens that are hoping that by saying this stuff, maybe he gets there? I don't know. I don't think this guy makes it past the Jets because I just think he's too talented for the Jets. So I think 16, or is that the Jets' second first-round pick?
16, yeah, that's their second.
Yeah, I think the floor for him is 16, where he could go. I could see teams in the top 10 being like, I like what he brings versus Carnell Tate. He's going to be shorter intermediate stuff, way more effective than maybe Tyson or Carnell Tate are with what he does. Just like I said, like a chain mover, a guy who's going to get you catch a ball for 5 yards and run it for 15. And I could see teams looking and saying, I'd rather have that. I value that for our offense versus getting another guy that can line up on the outside. Lemon can play in the slot as well, which I think is valuable. He can line up inside or outside, probably be just as efficient as the both of those. But again, if he starts to drop the interview stuff, it would be a big deal. So just keep an eye on that as well.
Yeah, man, I just feel like with wide receivers, some of these guys are just characters, man. At the end of the day, if they're going to make big plays for you, if they're going to come up with a big catch, if it's 3rd and 8 and they catch a 5-yard pass, if he's going to be able to be that guy to get you the 9 yards and get you that first down, yeah, you're gonna draft that guy. I don't put a lot of stake in that myself personally. All right, let's get to our next receiver on the list here. Talk about a guy who's been rising up charts from what I've seen. Omar Cooper Jr., right? So out of Indiana, 6 feet, 201 pounds, the junior, right? He spent 3 seasons at Indiana. In his career there, he caught 115 passes for almost 1,800 yards with 22 touchdowns. His last season at Indiana, his most productive, right? 69 catches, 937 yards, and 13 touchdowns, right? Playing with Fernando Mendoza and helping Indiana win the CFP National Championship. So he's a guy, like I said, who's really risen up draft boards due to his performance at the Combine. Ran a 4.42 40, including a 10-yard split of 1.55 seconds. And from what I've seen at this point, it's looking like he could be a mid-first round pick right now. So looking at Omar Cooper, his strengths, his weaknesses, and is there a comparable to him in the league right now?
Yeah, I would say I'm actually a little shocked that he's flying up boards the way he is. It's not to say I don't like him. I'm going to venture to guess part of the reason he's a natural slot wide receiver. He lined up in the slot 83% of the snaps while at Indiana. So if you are looking for a slot guy, you have your 2 guys, like the Rams, for example. If you want to add that other guy and you have your 2 guys that can play on the outside, Omar Cooper Jr. is going to be really, really valuable. Again, good route runner, likes to beat corners with his change of direction. Not the quickest natural athlete, but does have a good change of direction, good agility, good pace. Can be fluid with his routes. It kind of seems natural. I was impressed with his size for how good of a route runner he was. He's a willing blocker, played primarily in the slot. He's a very physical receiver, way more physical than the first three we've named, especially after the catch. He's going to kind of bounce off guys, drop his shoulder and run through weak tacklers. The type of guy who catches a screen pass and when the hole's there, will turn that screen into a 20, 25-yard gain while breaking 2 or 3 tackles. He has good hands, good feel as a route runner. He's the physicality shows when he blocks. Like Indiana asks him to get down the line at times and block, like crackback blocks, and he'll really get into guys. The concerns are he isn't the biggest wide receiver, and he'll struggle against longer corners, maybe not physical corners. I wrote that in my notes, but then after watching him a little bit more, he embraced the physical battle. Like he'll get into guys, but he's going to struggle against those longer guys, which is why the slot is where he's going to live. Probably won't be as effective on the outside as a slot, so that will limit what you try to do with him. While he can be a threat after the catch, he isn't the best athlete. He didn't run well at the combine, and we'll talk about that in a second. So he's not going to just naturally run by guys. Like I said, he can break off a 25, 30, 35-yard gain, but he's not going to take a slant to the house. He's not going to take a screen pass to the house. Can he become a consistent deep threat? Indiana used him a little bit like that, but not really. And he can struggle with contested catch stuff, which is for a guy as physical as he is, and he struggles to get that separation. He can struggle to make contested catches. And the fact of the matter is he just wasn't overly impressive at the combine. That's the concern with him. He's not a high-level athlete. His comparison is probably Deebo Samuel. I think you can line him up in a very similar way that the Niners lined up Deebo. I think you can line him up in the backfield a little bit. Indiana did that at times. He can play in the slot. You can line him up outside depending on the matchup. So he's going to be an asset to a team that utilizes him in multiple ways, and that's why I think he's shooting up draft boards in the first round. The Cowboys interviewed him or are going to have a 30 visit with him, which I think makes sense because he could be a trade target for the Cowboys if they traded back to the 20s. And now if you're taking him in the 20s, I think you're comfortable with that, with what you can do with him. But, what you see is what you get with him. He's going to be a slot guy. He's not the most threatening athlete in the draft, so you're going to have to live with that. And if you can find ways to scheme and get this guy open, you're going to be thrilled with what he brings. He had a really good year for Indiana this year, and he played with Elijah Surratt, who I'm going to talk about in a little bit with the best of the rest. Both of them had really good seasons, and Indiana didn't utilize deep passing a lot. So I think if you're looking for a guy that's just going to move the change very similar to Makai Lemon, Omar Cooper Jr. could be the guy for you.
Love a wide receiver that embraces physicality, man. Sign me up. As far as team fits, right? The earliest I had him was potentially the Jets at 16 here. I mentioned them earlier. Carolina at 19. I have the Steelers here at 21. This might come as a surprise to some folks, but I have the Eagles here at 23. If they're going to trade A.J. Brown, this might be a potential replacement for him. They'll need another wide receiver to run with Devontae Smith. So I think this would be a good fit for them. And then Cleveland. So Cleveland's second pick, right? If they don't take a receiver at pick number 6, they may be at pick number 24, right? This is the pick that they got from Jacksonville in the Travis Hunter deal the previous year. Maybe this is a spot where they look for a receiver and try to add to their offense. So those are my picks there. But again, as we get later into the draft here, a team like the LA Chargers, maybe at pick number 22, they might need another receiver next to Ladd McConkey. I don't know if they're still that high on Quentin Johnston. I'm not sure where he currently stands with the team. And then, of course, you got the 49ers, Chiefs, and Patriots later. Again, like we talked about, I don't know if this guy falls out of the first round with the amount of teams that really need wide receivers right now.
If he was an early day 2 pick, it wouldn't shock me. I think what we are starting to see is, if you like Makai Lemon and you like the profile of Makai Lemon, you probably like Omar Cooper Jr. And you're probably going, I'll just take Cooper after Lemon. Those two are kind of the only two in this round. Like, we're going to talk about KC Concepcion next, who's another kind of like slot shifty guy, but he's not of the profile of Lemon or Cooper. So I think I could see where he goes in the first round. I wouldn't be shocked if he's one of the first wide receivers taken, on day 2, but he's going to be probably a top 40, top 50 pick at a minimum.
All right, let's get to KC Concepcion. So KC, 5'11", 190 pounds out of Texas A&M. So he was originally recruited to NC State, where he played his freshman and his sophomore seasons. He had about 120 catches, 1,300 yards, and 16 touchdowns in those 2 seasons. So last season, he transfers to Texas A&M, catches 61 passes for 900 yards with 9 touchdowns, and he helps get A&M into the college football playoff. So another wide receiver, just like Makai Lemon, another wide receiver with a touchdown pass during his college career, and he spent some time as a punt returner too at A&M, so he's able to contribute on specials. And I've seen projections here for him. He could be a late first round, early second round pick, it's looking like. So let's get into KC. Strengths, weaknesses, and what is your outlook for him?
This is your kind of quick, shifty guy after he has the ball in his hands, right? We've talked about every kind of receiver but that. And again, whatever your flavor of wide receiver is, if you need it in the first 2 rounds, those types of guys are going to be here. Concepcion is quick. He uses that quickness to beat corners off the line of scrimmage. He also uses that quickness as a route runner to change directions, comebackers, out routes, just cross corners up. He's smooth getting in and out of routes. He's a guy who can be threatening after the catch. You get the ball in his hands. He's incredibly shifty in space, making guys miss. He'll catch it on one side of the field, run it the opposite side of the field with the way he is after the catch. Can be really difficult to deal with in man coverage. Like, he's a man beater. If you're getting this guy, you're putting him in the slot. You're on big downs. You're gonna look for him to win, and be the guy that gets you that first down. He's also a really strong runner. Like, for his shiftiness, he's gonna break tackles. He's going to break arm tackles, the weak tackles. He just has a low center of gravity, gets that ball in his hands, shifty, strong, and finds a way to move the change and pick up yards after the catch. Best used on shallow and intermediate routes, really effective in that stuff. Not nearly as impactful going deep or running those medium routes. Can struggle to find kind of the soft spot in zone coverage. Doesn't mean he can't play against zone, but he's more comfortable facing man than zone. For as quick as he is, doesn't have elite speed. You're not going to be able to just let him beat people deep. He's going to get the ball in his hands and have to work to beat guys. He can do it, but it's not like he's going to grab a slant and take it to the house like an Odell type. He doesn't have that type of speed. And he didn't work out at the combine or his pro day, which was a little concerning to me. And I think that's why we're starting to see him drop a little bit in mock drafts and maybe on people's boards, where Tyson has a quickness and an athleticism tool that you'll risk taking in the first round. Concepcion might not have that. In terms of NFL comparisons, I look at him as like a Zay Flowers, Curtis Samuel type wide receiver, where he's going to get the ball and be really, really explosive after he gets it in his hands.
Some team fits for me here with Concepcion. So outside of the typical picks that I've been mentioning here, as we get later into the first round, a team like the 49ers at 27, the Dolphins right at 30. That's the pick they got from the Broncos in the Jalen Waddle trade. The Patriots at 31. And then even if we get to the second round, he's probably, would you say, Tom? He's probably like a early second round pick at the latest. So you got the Jets at 33, the Titans at 35. Maybe even the Raiders at 36 there, if they're looking to pair him with Mendoza, right? I saw actually a report recently that the Raiders are doing their homework on wide receivers for the draft. So you would think at pick 36, if he's probably going to be one of those, maybe one of those top guys that they'll be looking at that spot. And then right behind them, the Giants at 37 even. So
you just took it out of my mouth.
Yeah, I can't really see him here falling out. Probably, I'd say a top 40 pick. I can't really see him falling from there.
Again, I think it depends on the type of wide receiver you need. I can 100% see a team that feels comfortable with what they have on the outside. Like maybe the Niners. Maybe the Niners look at Pearsall and now Evans and go, you know what? We'll pair KC Concepcion in the slot with those guys. If you're comfortable with what you have on the outside, there's a world where you take Concepcion in the 20s and you're really happy because he might be the guy that gets the single coverage, especially in man, and he will absolutely torch teams if they try to play him man. So I could see him going in the 20s, or even a team that likes him enough that wants to trade back into the 20s to potentially get him. I'm not trying to knock him or where he is. He probably just has the least value in terms of, and we're going to talk about Denzel Boston a little bit too, who's in kind of maybe a similar boat, but he's a different profile wide receiver. But yeah, Concepcion, I could see going in the late teens. I could see him going early second round. It's just where you value him as a receiver and what you value what he does in your team versus what other guys value him at.
All right, and let's get into Denzel Boston. So our biggest receiver that we're going to speak about here. So Denzel Boston from Washington University, 6'4", 209 pounds. He was a redshirt junior this past year. So spent 4 seasons at Washington. Didn't play much his freshman or sophomore seasons, really. But then his third year, right? So he catches 63 passes for 830 yards with 9 touchdowns. And then last season, catches 62 passes for 880 yards and 11 touchdowns. And fun fact, another wide receiver who went 2 for 2 throwing passes and threw a touchdown. So also spent some time returning punts too, so he can contribute on specials there. And again, this is a guy from the projections I've seen looking like a late first to early second round pick. So let's talk about his strengths and weaknesses and what your potential outlook is for him in the NFL.
Yeah, Denzel Boston, good size, 6'4", uses that size well. Comfortable with back shoulders, jump balls. Even if he isn't the most explosive athlete, he uses that size well. He uses the fact that he's 6'4" to his advantage. Really helps him on slants and contested catches as well. Like, he uses his body, gets his body in between the wide receiver, uses that frame well. He is quick, though. He's quick off the snap, which is how he wins. Because, again, he's not the fastest athlete. Gets off the ball well. It helps with his route running, and also helps his size helps him breaking tackles, being strong and physical. Good feel as a route runner, has great hands. He catches anything within his window that's thrown at him. He's a good, not great athlete. When you watch him run, he runs a little stiff. He runs a little upright. He can struggle to get off that sticky coverage, those guys that are long and athletic that can keep up with him. Doesn't have high level speed. All right. He isn't overly threatening after the catch. Was healthy for a good chunk was healthy for all of his career, but he got banged up a lot this year. There were a lot of plays he had to come out. There was one game he got carted off the field and then came back and played. So he's tough.
Warrior, man.
I do worry if these hits are A, starting to catch up with him, and B, as you said, didn't play a lot his first 2 years. This is the first 2 years of his college career that he was a consistent pass-catching target. And this year was the guy outside of Jordyn Coleman, the running back. So the focal point was on him, and he got beat up with that. He didn't block regularly. He has the size to do it, but can he do it in the NFL is a question. And listen, he didn't test well at the combine. He didn't run the 40. He just struggled with a lot of that stuff. We'll see what he runs at his pro day. I meant to look that up. I don't know if they've done their pro day yet. I don't think they have. I think he's going to run at his pro day. That was the hope. Listen, he's going to be a guy that the speed doesn't turn me away, because I think what he does is really good. The first guy I thought of when I watched him was Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman isn't some guy's cup of tea. I really like him as a wide receiver. He's going to get open doing what he does, and he's going to catch the ball. He may never be a top 20 wide receiver in the NFL, but he's either going to be a really good number 2, or he'll be your lead guy where you have to get him a little help to make sure he's great. But if we're going to talk about speed, I'm not saying he's Puka Nacua, but I'll always go back to Puka Nacua, and that Puka Nacua ran a 4.5 something in the NFL. And any team in the NFL right now would take him on their roster. So I don't look too much into speed when we're talking about guys like this. You're going to get Denzel Boston. He's a little bit of a threat deep. He isn't the biggest threat, but he can do the deep stuff. But he's going to be really good in the intermediate stuff. He can win off the line of scrimmage, catch those slants, move the ball, help move the chains. He's good in intermediate to medium stuff, and he's going to be a threat in the red zone. All that stuff all alone is why we're talking about him as a late first round, early second round pick. And that's where he's probably going to go.
So it says here that the Washington Huskies had their pro day last week. He did not run the 40. So Denzel Boston and Jonah Coleman, the running back who we spoke of on our last show, neither of them ran. Apparently, though, the other receiver, Omari Evans, had a very good day. So again, right, when we talk about pro days, like running 40s, of course, there's always just typically going to favor the players, folks, from
Yes.
the when you run 40s at your
Yeah.
pro day. So I guess Amari Evans was clocked at running a 4.25 to 4.30, depending on who you speak to. But yeah, he did not run in the 40 for his pro day
Yeah.
last week.
Yeah.
Which maybe he's nursing something of
It's
his own,
well,
some sort of minor injury, or
I
maybe, like you said, maybe he didn't trust what he'd be able to run, and it would hurt him his
that
draft status.
ultimately, I think it's I'm trying to protect my draft stock thing.
Mhm.
You have the film. If you like what you see on film, you're going to draft me. If you're that concerned about my athletic ability, you're probably not going to draft me. I'm guessing he's gotten enough assurances from teams. He's comfortable not running that 40. So I think he'll be a back end of the first round pick. I actually really liked his film. I really liked his tape. What he doesn't show in athleticism doesn't scare me away. And again, if I have a guy like, I'm sure you're going to bring up teams, but if I have a guy that I really like on the outside, like even the Seahawks, I look at the Seahawks and I go, they have Cooper Kupp, who's going to retire soon. They have JSN. They have somebody else. Who am I missing? Don't they have one other? Oh, they have Rashid Shaheed.
Yes.
Denzel Boston can step into that team and be an outside guy for that football team day one and help them win football games. Like, he's that good of a receiver. He's going to step onto a team in day one and contribute. So don't let the lack of speed or lack of doing stuff at the combine or pro day scare you away from this guy as a wide receiver.
Yeah, well, we can talk about some team fits here, right? Outside of the usuals that I've been pointing out. I had Kansas City here at pick number 29.
Yeah,
I think they could really use a guy with some size right on the outside. Again, I'll mention Miami and New England at 30 and 31. And then if we get into the second round, if he drops into the second round, right, the Jets at 33, the Titans at 35, the Raiders at 36. You can see the teams that are really looking at receivers, folks, here in the draft. You know, there's a lot of from what we've done today, Tom. You know, just from what you've explained, I think this is a pretty good depth of receivers here. And let's see. So we've gone through 6 of these guys. How many of these guys would you project could be a wide receiver one?
Oh, good question. All right, let me, because I was just very quickly, I just Googled quickly, like, where Denzel Boston was going in mocks. And yeah, a lot of New England, a lot of Pittsburgh, a lot of Houston Texans. Like, that makes sense. They have a guy in place there and he can be a solid number 2. Number ones, I think Carnell Tate can be a number 1. I think Makai Lemon can give you number 1 production, very similar to what Amon-Ra St. Brown does in Detroit. You're probably going to want to pair a guy up with him, similar to Jameson Williams, what he does there. Jordyn Tyson, if he's healthy, is absolutely a number 1. And then I think there's a world where Denzel Boston can be a number 1 for you. And then I think we're talking about KC Concepcion is a really good complementary piece, and Omar Cooper Jr. is a really good complementary slot piece. Like, both those could be your second best target on a team. If you're Kansas City and Travis Kelce's your number 1 option, if you draft Denzel Boston there, you're thrilled that he's your second option. Pittsburgh as DK Metcalf, you'd be so happy to get Omar Cooper Jr. or Denzel Boston or Jordyn Tyson to pair with that. So yeah, I think there are 3 or 4 guys you could say are going to give you number 1 wide receiver production, and then the rest will be really good number 2s, really good complementary pieces, along with some of the guys we're going to name with the best of the rest here that are going to go in and be, guys that can fit your football team.
So let's close with talking about the best of the rest. So, from the film you've reviewed on all the wide receivers here, are there any other wide receivers that we did not cover here specifically that our audience should be familiar with?
And these are some guys that either I've watched or I watched during the year or I've read about, just read and said, hey, people like him. Jeremy Bernard from Alabama is going to be a day 2 pick. People really, really like him, like what he did at Alabama this year. Chris Bell from Louisville is another name that you'll hear thrown out here and there. Was banged up a little bit, but people like him if he's healthy. Jacoby Lane is another big body wide receiver from USC. Some teams have absolutely been raving about, saying he could be a day 2 pick. Elijah Surratt, I really like. I'm
Me
kind of
too.
shocked he's not being talked about more. Like when you watch the Indiana film, he stands out as much on that film as Omar Cooper Jr. does. Again, not a high level athlete, but a guy that gets the ball in his hands and then just makes plays, will take a slant 30 yards for a touchdown or a screen for a touchdown. He has that ability. Skylar Bell is a guy who worked out for UConn and apparently tested really, really well. And there are some, media scouts there saying, I hear he's locked in to be a day 2 pick. Like he's going to get picked in the 2nd or 3rd round. And there's Chris Brazell II from Tennessee that people are really liking. So that's 5 or 6 guys that I just named. And again, I haven't watched all these guys, but I've heard all of those names could go on day 2. So that's, the 6 we talked about plus another 6, that's 12 to 13 wide receivers that could go in the first 2 days of the draft. So if you're a team or you're a fan of a team that you're like, hey, I really want to get a wide receiver, we talked about these guys, and the guy you like is gone before you pick in the 20s or the teens, there's going to be a guy, maybe not exactly the same, but of a similar build, to that you can take. Like the Branch from Georgia, he's a slot guy. If you like what you've heard about KC Concepcion or Omar Cooper Jr., but you're picking in the top half of the draft and you don't want to take that there, it doesn't make sense. Well, Zachariah Branch is going to be there for you in the 2nd round somewhere there. And Chris Brazell II, he's going to be that big body guy that, oh, you know what? I really like a Carnell Tate or I really like Denzel Boston, but we're not going to get him because they're going to go in the either the top of the 1st round or in the 20s. We're in that teens where it doesn't make sense. You know what? In the 40s of the 2nd round, I can take that guy there. So this draft has so many guys that you can take that are going to fit what you're looking for. And that's why this position group, corner and edge, are probably the 3 deepest in this draft.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth there. I mean, I think most of all fans, whatever team you root for, if you have a wide receiver need and you miss out on maybe someone in the 1st round, don't panic, because there's a lot of solid receivers in this draft that, I echoing it. Tom and I both believe that there's guys that can be developed here, even in the 2nd round, as some guys we didn't talk about specifically here, who Tom just mentioned. If coaching staffs can develop these guys like Elijah Surratt, who I really like too. He might be better than Omar Cooper in my eyes, and guys like Jeremy Bernard from Alabama. And there's a lot of depth here. And I from what I've seen too, I really believe that this position, like you just mentioned, along with corner and edge, this is one of the best positions in this draft.
And this is where value comes into it, right? Like, there might be a guy, if you're a fan of a team that you love, and your coaches look and go, the difference between Chris Brazell II and Denzel Boston isn't as big as you might think. So you know what? Instead of spending 20 on Boston, we can get a guy that's better on our board at 20. And then we can get Brazell Jr. later. We can get Malachi Fields later. We can get Jacoby Lane later. That's what good teams do. They're not. Puka Nacua was a 5th round pick. I'm probably going to remind people of that this entire process. There are going to be wide receivers that show you what you want, and the value is just better than taking them in the 1st round.
All right, folks, thanks for hanging in the loft with us. The official Loft Sports podcast can be found wherever you consume your podcasts. Check out our website, loftsportus.com. We continue to add scouting reports for the draft. Tom continues to work on those. I got to add some reports for Omar Cooper and Denzel Boston. I'm going to try to add those over the weekend. Please check out our articles, rate and review our articles. Please let us know how we are doing. Feedback is very important for us to know what we're doing, whether we're doing something right. Maybe we need to do something better. Please let us know. Our NFL Draft Series will continue on Tuesday when we break down the top tight ends in the draft. And we'll get more scouting reports up soon. I've got full baseball predictions now posted to the site. The season officially is underway. So I've got award winners on there for baseball, full playoff matchup breakdown. So go check that out too. Follow Loft Sports on X, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all 5 social platforms. We are under Loft Sports USA. Please rate and review us on whichever platform you listen to your podcasts. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will talk to you soon.